And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
I'm Vito LaBella, retired NYPD lieutenant, a community and education activist, and a candidate for the New York City Council in the 43rd District.
Please vote for me, Vito LaBella, during early voting between October 28th and November 5th, or on Election Day, November 7th. I'm Vito LaBella, fighting for New York, and I approve this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. New York's finest, Retired and Unfiltered podcast. We're joined today by a former, actually, I hate saying former, by a retired NYPD lieutenant, served 33 years, Vito J. LaBella. Vito's running for District 43, Southern Brooklyn, New York City Council. He's running on the Conservative Party ticket line. We're excited to have him here. As always, I'm joined by the most complained cop in the NYPD, also known as the boogeyman on the streets of the Bronx, Eric S. Dim. Eric, how you doing, my brother?
Outstanding. It's a pleasure to have Vito LaBella. Vito, I don't know you personally, but I read your bio. Sounds quite interesting. Of course, you're a fellow law enforcement officer. I think this is going to be a great interview and definitely hear about your story and how you're running for New York City Council. So why don't we get started with it? We know that you have 32 years with the police department. Tell us where you grew up and how you became a cop. Obviously, you came on 32 years ago. It was a much different time. So tell us exactly that.
No, it's
Please,
what? It's almost 39 years ago. I came on in 1986, January 9th, 86. So it was a long, long time ago, right? I was original transit. I tell people, you know, they gave us a radio this big that was like a brick. It didn't work. They told us to ride the trains by ourselves from 242nd Street in the Bronx to New Lots Avenue in Brooklyn, and this from 8 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning, right? And we did that for a year, and then I did midnights in District 1 in Manhattan. Got promoted a couple of times, and most of my career was spent doing quality of life, plainclothes enforcement in District 4, which is from the Manhattan Bridge all the way up to 125 in Lex. And so, you know, riding the trains every night in plain clothes with the cops and the sergeants, looking for quality of life. You know, you guys know, after service, quality of life on the trains, you run a name, who's got a warrant, who's wanted for murder, who's wanted for robbery, right? Who's on parole, who's on probation, you know, and you take these guys out of the subway system before they can victimize anybody else, right? You're riding the train at 3 in the morning, walking between cars. Where are you going? What are you doing? Right, you got a history of robbery, history of grand larceny, right? And now you're doing stuff. So now we're gonna lock you up for that, and we're gonna make sure that you don't victimize somebody. And it worked, right? We brought crime down from the 1990s, like way up, all the way down to historic lows, up into 2016, 2017. De Blasio comes in, he wins his second term. He is unbound. De Blasio unbound all the progressive policies. He stopped playing clothes. Every progressive thing he wanted, he pushed through because there was no checks and balances. There was no reason for him to put the brakes on, right? And so I retired in 2017. I couldn't deal with it anymore.
And you retired out of District 4 too? Where'd you retire?
Retired out of District 4, yep.
And you retired there.
I did 20 years in District 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
God bless you. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. That's all. You're transit cop your whole career then. Now that's good. Yeah. No, I never did transit. I mean, I've done it just during details, times when, you know, heightened senses of security, stuff like that. But I never did it solely. I always kind of wanted to dabble in transit, but I was a precinct guy. And then I started getting other crazy offers and I bounced all around. Eric went patrol, but then went housing and state housing. So yeah. we have 3 representations really just bouncing around. So that's
transit and housing, right? We're the stepchildren. Then the merge happens, and now it's like, holy gosh, those are good. They became a detail, right? People actually wanted to go.
Yeah. So Vito, so I always believe that cops have like a very good overall perspective of New York City. What made you decide to want to become into the political arena?
Well, I mean, look, you have to go back from right after I retired. Retired in 2017. Like I said about de Blasio and his progressive policies. My kids are in school. We were very active. I retired to work with my wife as a PTA president at my kids' middle school. Right, I was supposed to do the paperwork, do the legal stuff, get them approved for a 501c3. We did that, and then in I believe it was June of 2018, De Blasio says that there are too many Asians in Stuyvesant and Brooklyn Tech, Staten Island Tech, all of these schools. They're called the specialized high schools, and he wants to limit. So my school was sending 275 out of 300 kids to schools like Stuyvesant and Brooklyn Tech, and he wanted to lower that down to like 33. Right, so that's how I got involved in community activism, education activism, and it just snowballed. John, I got to tell you, you start. I went from policing a demonstration. Now I'm leading a demonstration over the Brooklyn Bridge. We're protesting at City Hall, and I met so many great people. People who thought that New York was going in the wrong direction. And, I got involved with the Community Education Council. So that's like a school board. If you don't have kids in New York City, you don't know any of this. It's okay. And I just started to get deeper and deeper, right? Because I felt that you could be a community activist yelling and screaming in the sidelines. But you know what? They'll listen to you a little better if you're a state senate candidate, ran for state senate last year, or a city council candidate, or a city council member, right? If I'm the city council common sense caucus and I'm yelling and screaming, you know what? It's a little bit more attention. It's a little bigger bullhorn than just the community activist Vito yelling and screaming.
Well, I'm curious, before I ask you this question, where did you grow up?
Grew up in Brooklyn, born and raised, Severian High School.
All right, so we got three New York City kids here, 3 New York City cops. We got some commonality already.
Yeah.
So John and I talk about this all the time, right? So you retired 2017. And I think that's really important that we actually drill down on that year, because we talk about in the podcast that, especially for me, being targeted by an overzealous civilian complaint review board, 2018, we started to really feel the job just completely spin on its head. And I think the ultimate turning point was actually 2019, where Daniel Pantaleo was fired by Jimmy O'Neill. And then after that, his successor, Dermot Shea, just gave the police department away. And you talked about the things that you talk about here really reflect on intrusive police work, right? The stuff that you do in the subways. And that and you even mentioned plainclothes, where we've been totally retracted from that because of these 2 specific commissioners, along with these progressive politics. So for John and I, we felt the world's completely changed while we're on the job. And the terminology we hear from a lot of the cops, and we use it also, is it's the same patch, but different job. So here you are. You came on the job in 1986. Could you tell me what are the similarities that you felt in 1986 up to 2017 in comparison from 2018 moving forward, and what are the differences?
Well, first, like you talk about the nexus between politics and the progressive shift. 2018 is when Republicans lost the New York Senate. Okay, we had the independent caucus that would vote with Republicans a lot of the times. We lost Marty Golden, another retired cop, retired detective. Marty Golden was our senator, and if you're a Republican in New York, even if you have a slight majority in the Senate, it's not so much what you're pushing through, it's what you're preventing the crazy left from getting through. And once we lost the Senate, the dam broke open. That's where we got every single crazy bail reform, raise the age, all of those crazy laws. That's how we lost it. And they overcorrected. If you wanted to tweak it, maybe you could justify it, but they overcorrected so far, and we see the results right now. But 86, the subways were a way different place in the 70s and the 80s, right? We've seen pictures of it. You think warriors, right? And that wasn't too much of an exaggeration. They really were. You took your life in your hands riding the train, and we got that down. We started with the graffiti removal, lock it up graffiti artists, really keeping them, not DATing them, desk appearance ticket, releasing them right after they get arrested. We didn't do any of that. And by doing this, it sends the message that bad behavior won't be tolerated. And I just don't, and I don't know, maybe these people who came in like in the middle of 2015, 10 years after 9/11, they came from God knows where. They look around and say, no, this city is wonderful. I can't imagine that it was so bad, right? They have no clue. They have no clue how bad it was. And they think that they could do all this stuff and it not have a negative impact on the city. And they're just so wrong. They are so wrong.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, and just to confirm, I mean, I used to ride the train with my mother. My mother was a school crossing guard. Everyone in the community loved her. But we used to ride from the train from Bensonhurst to my grandmother's neighborhood in Sunset. And my mother would carry a big butcher knife in her. It was a scary place covered in graffiti. It looked exactly like the worst. And that was one of the safer train lines, by the way, in New York City. That wasn't even one of the more dangerous ones, and it still was a very scary place to ride the train from, to leave. Bensonhurst was a predominantly safe neighborhood, but it was mafia controlled. It wasn't because of the Dinkins era style policing at that time when I was a kid, and but Vito, like for people that don't understand New York City and don't understand what these progressive Marxists have done to New York City, what do you think are the major issues plaguing New York City? We spoke offline and I think we basically agree, but for the audience, could you just elaborate on what your platform is and what you believe the major issues that are plaguing New York City are?
So we do surveys. We talk to the voters. There's some data analytics involved. Every survey, every poll comes back again and again and again. The number one issue: safety and quality of life. Okay, we're talking about the stuff they don't feel safe. We're talking about all of the stuff behind glass. We're talking about e-bikes running people over. This sense of lawlessness that's just pervasive throughout New York City. And I was at a precinct community council last year, and I was a bit of a jerk because the CEO is up there trying to do his tap dance, and he says, our crime is down. Our crime is down, saying it again and again. And I said, excuse me, boss, when you talk about crime is down, you're talking about the 8 crimes, right? 8 felony crimes, right? What about the stuff that really people see, the violations, the petty larcenies, this and that? I mean, that's the stuff that people are talking about. That's what makes them feel unsafe. The homeless people on the corner that no one addresses anymore. That's the stuff. And he had a backpedal. I felt bad after he said, Vito, you're a retired lieutenant. Why'd you do that to me? I said, I'm sorry, boss. I mean, I know what you got to do, but now you can say that this jerk LaBella, who's running for Senate or city council, he's out there, and it gives you an out. It gives you the ability to say, well, we know that crime is up as far as petty larcenies and quality of life conditions. And we know, well, I have to do something, I have to address it because I have this jerk LaBella, asking me about it at the community precinct council. But that's the number one issue. Most recently, number 2, believe it or not, migrants in New York City. That's and there's so much stuff we could talk about that. And then 3 is cost of living. And I got to say, I'm disappointed, disheartened, because it's the stuff that I care about, how I got into this, education, that's like single digits. When you have to have a kid in public school, you have to kind of know what's going on, and you have to care, right? So unfortunately, only a small percentage of the population cares about the public schools and education. But hey, I care about it, and what I try to communicate to people that it's all related. It's all related. During the 80s and 90s, the schools were crap. The schools were crazy. You wouldn't send your kid to public school. I went to Catholic school my whole career, my whole education. And as the Bloomberg and Giuliani era, 20 years of improving quality in the schools, that's why we saw enrollment in Catholic and private schools go down, because people said, wow, the public schools are good. Why do I want to spend this money? I can send them to public schools. So as the subways got better, as the schools got better, people came in to New York City instead of moved out of New York City. People invested their time. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn. I decided to buy the house next to my mom and dad. So my kids are being raised in Brooklyn. We went to public school in Brooklyn because we still had good schools. It was only 2018 when they decided to upend everything that I got involved in politics and activism.
I'm actually, I'm really excited that you just spoke about this. And I want to reflect on the NYPD just had their third quarter meeting for the year of 2023 where they reflect on crime. And John and I are pretty expressive. We had put out some tweets and stuff on Instagram in relations to this this particular meeting. And in particular, Chief John Shell actually spoke. And I don't know if you had an
I
opportunity to
saw
see
you.
this. So you did, right? And what did he say? And the reason why, let me just circle back before I say that.
Yeah.
The reason why I think it's so important, for me, I'm a firm believer that safety is paramount. And in order to have a thriving city and a flourishing city, financially, economically, emotionally, safety has to be the number one priority in order for everything else to blossom. And so we see the effects. I mean, John recently, he's in Florida. He recently went to New York for the summer. And immediately, he and I spoke constantly. He said he could feel it and he could see it. And what Chief John Shell said at this quarterly meeting is that we need to have this narrative constantly about the perception of safety and crime. And this is where I find extremely problematic is if the crime is legitimately down, and John has actually put up the actual CompStat numbers to show that it's actually inaccurate. And I do agree what you're saying. Maybe in some categories when it comes to major felony crimes are down, but petty larcenies are all over the place. The quality of life has just completely diminished. Those issues are not being addressed. The homelessness, the mental health. So what he's saying is he's trying to sell the public that, hey, you should feel safe. But if crime and safety are correlating and the crime is down, we shouldn't have to sell it. It should feel safe. So what is your stance on that when it comes, what would your relationship be if you get into the city council? What would your relationship be with the present commissioner right now when it comes to safety? Would you have open conversations? What would be the ultimate goal to have a nexus and a relationship with the commissioner as we speak?
Well, so look, fingers crossed I get in. I'm part of the Common Sense Caucus. We grow it to 10 or 11 in the Common Sense Caucus, right? So that means we're outnumbered 40 to 11 on the city council. 26 city council members are DSA, progressive members. 26, more than half, right? So we have to be realistic. I have a character flaw. I don't lie to people. I don't overpromise. What are we going to do? So we're going to have to, as a group, and if we could really flip South Brooklyn and we have Staten Island, we could have this really geographic area that says, listen, this area is voting, is telling you what they want. I want the cops to take over peddler enforcement again. I want the cops to take over homeless outreach again. We have homeless. Listen, human behavior, you need the carrot and the stick. You have to reward good behavior. You have to punish bad behavior. These individuals, they're on the street. They're coming back. They're really, it's so hard to deal with the same homeless person again and again and again. They're not just homeless. We know that. They're mentally ill. They're drug addicted. They're alcoholic. That's what the main issue is. How are we letting them stay here and not give them the help? But it's like, okay, you could come to the hospital. You could get into a program. You get into a group home. You can't stay in the subway. We're going to help you. But if you keep on coming back and spreading out your boxes and making a tent city, you're going to end up going to jail. So it's going to be jail if you violate the law, you violate quality of life statutes, or it's going to be some kind of program where you're off the streets, because it's not just your rights. It's the rights of everybody else around you that you're impinging on. So yeah, you got to just send that message. Send that message. We want to try to address everything holistically. So I get a lot of complaints along the 8th Avenue commercial corridor or along the 86th Street commercial corridor of unlicensed peddlers, right? We have store owners, paying rent, paying taxes. They got to put up all the onerous regulations from the city. And you have people set up right outside their store selling a lot of times similar stuff, lower quality, no taxes, they're not paying anything. And how is that right? We got to get these people out of there. It's maybe we have an area where we have a market, a public flea market in a municipal parking lot somewhere, so these individuals can sell their stuff without impacting the store owners. But once they go back, we got it. We have to, we have to send a message. You come back here, you're going to get summons. You're going to get arrested. We're going to confiscate your stuff. This is not a place that you can stay.
Absolutely. I actually love it. I actually love your platform. I didn't really know much about it until today. And I appreciate you being honest with it. You're really trying to get yourself in there as a defensive back, basically, at this point. And
Yes.
that's what I believe the pathway for New York City is we have to take back these seats in New York City Council, and state Senate and state assembly, in the lower seats, in all of these little public advocates office, anything that has a platform or a voice. We need common sense people to get back in there and get New York City back on track. But as of right now, yes, you're outnumbered. We need defensive backs in there. We need people that aren't going to align. Vito mentioned the DSA. 26 members of New York City Council are DSA. That is the Democratic Socialists of America. I have just recently come to find out today that they actually blocked me on Twitter preemptively before I actually got to say anything to them. We had a horrible tragedy yesterday in Israel. And for those of you that aren't aware, New York City is comprised of every ethnicity, creed, color, religion, sexual preference, anything you could think of. We have a community for it in New York City. And, so my heart goes out to the people of Israel, and 1,000%. But I have plenty of friends who are Palestinians. I have plenty of friends who are anti the state of Israel, and they have issues with it, but they don't support the loss of innocent life. What we saw yesterday was horrific. Today at 1:00, New York City, the Democratic Socialists of America will be calling for an end to apartheid in Times Square in New York City. I mean, if that's not the exact wrong message to send, I believe it's lighting gasoline on flames, the flames that are already stoking, flames of hate, flames of division. We're supposed to be, as Americans, and I want politicians in office that are going to lead everyone and understand everybody from both sides. I don't believe that that's the goal of the Democratic Socialists of America. I believe that throwing gasoline on the fire. Vito, what do you have to say to the DSA particularly about this event that they're hosting today?
Dude, thank you so much, because it is a tightrope. So we saw on Twitter, we saw these images of women, girls, babies being dragged naked through the streets. Screaming. I think of my daughter. Imagine somebody, comes to your house, grabs your daughter and takes her away at gunpoint. You're not supposed to make analogies with the Holocaust, but every single World War II movie, every movie about the Holocaust, you saw the Nazis came in and dragged Jews out of their homes and took them away. How could you not see the similarities? I got so angry, so upset. But at the same token, I know my dear friends in the Arab community, they are horrified about what happened. They would stand up to it in a heartbeat. And whenever we talk about a specific thing, and this is something that I think sometimes you guys, thank you, you understand because you're cops. You understand, protect and serve have no qualifiers after it. We protect and we serve everyone. So, what I say is that these individuals, Hamas, they did something horrible, but we should never conflate that with our Muslim and our Arab brothers and sisters living in New York, trying to live their lives, that they may have a sympathy for Palestine or the Arab community over there, but they're here. I say Bay Ridge and Borough Park are not at war. They're not shooting scuds at each other. They want to practice their religion. They want to live their life. They want to raise their children. And everyone in New York City should have the right to do that without, like you said, the DSAs, instead of calling for peace, what they're doing inadvertently or maybe intentionally is they're calling for more violence. And we should be disgusted by them.
Thank you so much for saying that. I'm absolutely appalled by this entire thing. And I was happy that when John put it out today about the event that's happening, he just put one word, and I think it says it all: evil. it's legitimate evil. I myself, I've actually been accused of being some white supremacist. I guess my appearance, but I actually am of Jewish heritage. I had a bar mitzvah myself. I have generation family members that emanated from Israel, and I've worked with numerous members from the police department that were of Palestinian descent, and we would never advocate for this type of violence on both sides, and especially in New York City. It's so important on our stance and how we act. It's so important because arguably, and it's actually a fact, there are more Jewish people in New York City than in most cities in Israel as we speak. I think the only city that has more Jewish people is Tel Aviv than New York City. But so it is extremely problematic here. I think that this should be shut down and just not allowed at all. Yes, there's a First Amendment right for speech, but the police department also has a duty to have their intelligence to decipher if there's potential for violence, and we could actually just completely curb it. But it's unfortunate. What we're seeing is that in situations like this, the police department completely retracts themselves. They'll operate in a delicate manner, as we've heard from Jeffrey Madry, chief of New York City Police Department, about handling youths at a riot in a delicate manner. And this is what I want to ask you about and going further. But yet, when we have Curtis Sliwa and his constituents and his cohorts in Staten Island protesting illegal immigrants, right? Illegal activity, but they're met aggressively by the police department. That's what I find problematic. What is your stance on what's going on right now with what's going on in Staten Island with the way the police department has been handling it in comparison to the riots at Union Square?
Right. So, I mean, look, we have to have one standard for everybody. One standard. As soon as the violence starts, that's when you take action. That's when you say, okay, this is not a protest. This is not a celebration. Destruction of property, people getting injured. Boom. Now that becomes whatever it was. Now it's a riot. Now, okay, now you have to break up the crowd. I'm all for de-escalation, right? So listen, you want to talk, you want to try to negotiate, you want this, but once that don't work, plan B. And plan B is, full enforcement. You break up the crowd, you send everybody home, and if they engage in violence, you put them in the flex cuffs and, you send them down. And at the very least, they're getting disorderly conduct summonses and let them cool off the cell for an hour and get rid of them there. But you have to aggressively address violence. The migrant issue, I was with Curtis at Cannonball Park in Bay Ridge. He had a protest, very peaceful. We had 500 people there. The migrant issue is touchy. Again, this is a national issue. Okay, we got to replace the president next year. Got to replace him. Okay, we want to close the border. You could have one of those buoys, those Hunger Game buoys. Have them from the mouth of the Rio Grande all the way down to the head of the Rio Grande. That's fine. Totally secure the border. But that's not going to be the city council's job, right? Right now, as it stands, there are three things about the migrant issue that I want to talk about. We have migrant children in schools who are not vaccinated. Okay. My kids went to public school. You need the MMR. You need a whole host of vaccines to go to school. These kids are getting a waiver. We need to have vaccination clinics with school nurse practitioners that are making sure these kids are examined. These kids have a pediatrician, and these kids are getting all of the vaccines they need to stay in school. Because what unvaccinated kids do in a school is it really jeopardizes the safety of kids who are immunocompromised and can't get vaccinated for medical reasons. And that's how you have outbreaks. I was told that in CC2, which is Lower Manhattan, we've had outbreaks of measles. We have had outbreaks of all of these things because these kids are not vaccinated, right? We have to address that. Let's address the problem. That's the first problem. Second problem, schools are not shelters. Public parks are not shelters. We should not be taking away resources and amenities and necessities from our New Yorkers, our kids, our fellow New Yorkers, to house these migrants. Okay, we got to figure it out. And if there's no more room, there's no more room. Sorry, there's no vacancy. You got to go somewhere else. You don't have a place to go. You got to figure it out. You can't stay here. 3, you've seen the New York Post article. and this dovetails for transit and also policing. We have young kids, 6, 9, 12 years old, riding the subways, selling candy, selling candy. First off, it infuriates me because you have kids selling candy, you have kids being trafficked. The same, you have more desperate parents, are selling. Those kids could get thousands of bucks. The parents, the people here, maybe coyotes, thousands of bucks to traffic these kids. Horrible, horrible. It enrages me. I feel a sense of helplessness that I know that these kids are being victimized. But let's talk about, guys, we're all on the job, right? Can the poor cop see this kid and bring this kid in? What's the lieutenant at desk going to say? He's like, oh, Jesus, this is gonna kill the post that the next lieutenant coming in on the desk is going to have to cover, send the kid to the hospital, send the kid to ACS, all this paperwork. So, I mean, everyone's going to get their chops busted for trying to address this, and then the kid's going to get out. We used to have Operation Toolbox in transit, right? It was basically, 24-hour period, 2-day period. You lock everybody up, you have full enforcement, and then you monitor how we did by the districts, by the platoon, to get everybody engaged in the effort. We need Operation Save the Children, where we have set up all of the resources available so that we can take these migrant kids, we can take them to a centralized location, get them checked out health-wise, tell the parents, listen, this is one warning. Where are your kids going to school? Get them assigned to a school. Make sure they're going. If we see your kid in the subway again, we're going to take this kid away from you. We're going to put this kid in foster care. Your kids cannot sell candy or anything else on the subway. And we have to have it's got to be a broad, holistic, all agency initiative to get these kids out of the subways, into schools, vaccinated. We have to address the problem. Let's close the border. I mean, I get called a libtard. Remember that word? I get called a libtard because I want to give these kids vaccinations and I want to get them out of the system. But these kids are here now, so we have an ethical and moral responsibility to take care of them, right? Then we close the border and send everybody. The other thing we want to do is, remember, we used to work with immigration. So you could run somebody and he wasn't here legally, and you lock him up for robbery, you lock him up for whatever, he's getting collared all the time. You could make a phone call and you give him to ICE and you get him out of the system so he's not a problem anymore. The very least we should do, we don't cooperate with ICE anymore. The police department doesn't. The very least, anybody who commits a violent crime should be checked through E-Verify, make sure they're here legally, make sure what their status is. And if they're here conditionally or illegally, you know what? You're committing robberies, you're committing violations or petty larcenies again and again, you're recidivist. Guess what? You're not of good moral character. That should still count. When my grandparents came, when your grandparents came, you had to be of good moral character to become a citizen, to stay in the United States. We got to go back at least to that standard. And that's reasonable, right? I always start with, let's see what we can get the most consensus for. We get more people on board and work toward that. Because the big stuff, if you just concentrate on everything, if you have this purity test, what do they say? Don't let the great be the enemy of the good. We have to try to address what we can, what we have a lot of consensus for.
I mean, the hypocrisy in New York City, though, it's just on such a level. I mean, I couldn't finish my career. I had to vest out with 18 years on because I wouldn't take one shot that did not act as promised. My children could not eat in restaurants. I could not take them to the zoo. They could not partake in after school activities. They were separated at lunch tables. All of this stuff. And then we just let people in that are completely a risk to the public. My children were of no risk to the public. They had COVID because I brought it home to them because I served the city in the line of duty. I brought it home to them. I had it myself. We had antibodies. And we were told we shouldn't get hospital care. We weren't allowed to partake in society in New York City. I do agree with you, though, that yes, like as much as I support medical freedom, I support the medical freedom. The same shots that my children and your children were required to get, everybody should get. If you're coming in this country, illegally, which, because again, they're not asylum seekers. The majority of these people are not asylum seekers, even though that's what they're being called. They are not coming from asylum seeking countries. By definition, they don't fit that criteria. So they're entering the country illegally. But I know we have hearts. America has a big heart. New York City has a big heart. We love women. We love children. We love families. We love people that want to come here and work. And it's not, we can't hold them accountable because they want to come to live in the best place in the world, in the greatest country in the world, in the greatest city in the world. But, they chase lifelong residents like myself out. They chase lifelong residents like Eric out, our children out. And we're just telling the whole world, come in. You're exempt from all of these rules. I personally think that, yes, we need to close the border 1,000%. But I personally think that the mayor is highlighting, New York City Mayor Eric Adams is highlighting exactly what you do not do as a city. He's showing the world exactly what you do not do, and he's failing on a grandstand. He's failing miserably. I put out a post yesterday, went pretty viral, got a couple 100,000 views, of him saying we need to keep the border open. We need to keep the border open. This is New York City mayor. He wakes up each morning, he flips a coin, different ways.
When did he say that?
3 days ago, right before he went on his trip. 3 days ago,
right? Got to close the border. When did he flip?
3 days ago, check my post. 3 days ago, he holds a press conference right before he gets on his plane and goes around. We need to keep the border open, right? And then my other problem is his right to shelter law does not apply to these people. But he continues to play the game that it applies. It applies. It does not apply. And I continue to say that he's incentivizing them. And that's where I think he's failed. What do you think about New York City mayor's handling of particularly just the migrant crisis?
He could, with a stroke of a pen, say that New York City is the right to shelter is for New Yorkers only. New Yorkers only. That's what the original intention was. That was the original intention. And the fact that you could come here from any place in the world and be guaranteed 90 days of free room and board, that's just ridiculous. Of course, it's incentivizing it. And, and what you said is 100% correct, that these individuals will eventually not qualify, but they're getting pieces of paper. So I don't call them illegal because we've invited them in. We say that, okay, you're an asylum seeker. Here's this piece of paper. Your hearing date is in 2030. Come back in 7 years. And then they come to New York City, which is a sanctuary city. So if they never come back, no one's going to look for them. No one's going to look for them. So we incentivize people coming here in so many ways by not cooperating and getting rid of people who commit crimes. And we don't call ICE. That incentivizes people to come here. By don't checking to see if everybody in an institution, whether it's a restaurant or a supermarket, is everybody legally working? Do they have employment identification numbers? You could get an employee identification number without being a citizen, and at least you're paying. You're paying withholding taxes. You're paying. They're paying workers' comp. They're paying disability insurance. They're putting away Social Security. They're putting money into Medicare. So at least they're supporting the system instead of this under the table, this undercover or underground economy that's really taking resources from all of us. That's why Social Security is going broke. So yeah, we have to do a whole bunch of things. Everything you said. The one thing that the city council could encourage the mayor to do is, again, stroke of a pen. New York City is not a sanctuary city. We do cooperate with ICE, and the right to shelter applies to New Yorkers.
Absolutely. I love everything you're saying. We're all in agreement here. I say it all the time. I feel that when you crossing the border, the analogy I always use, it's almost like, you're playing football and you hit the 50-yard line, and there's all these signs, free food, free shelter, and a potential for getting work. So if you get to New York City, you got the touchdown. So And again, when we reflect on Mayor Eric Adams here, I mean, there's no one better at double talking than Mayor Eric Adams. And exactly what John said. A couple of days ago, we heard something completely different. And we heard, if you get a chance to look at John's Twitter, and you can hear his speech where he says, our position is open borders, and we're going to have a decompression plan. He's great when it comes to words and terms and names, but he doesn't actually explain what this decompression plan is. I have no idea how you decompressing this plan when you decompressing this plan when they have 90 days to stay. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think it's so absurd. Again, I mean, did he really need to go to Mexico to see what's going on with the migrant crisis? You could just look at Google Maps and you could just see it's out of control. I mean, does he really need to do that? And since when does a mayor bypass Washington to go to Mexico? Why, if anything, go to Washington and petition there? Why is he going to Mexico?
He's
to
auditioning
go out
for
and
president.
What'd you say, Vito? What'd you say? Because he's what?
He's auditioning for president, right? That's what he's doing.
It sure appears that way. But I'd like to just move on from this topic because this is very near and dear to me, right? You're running for New York City Council. And I as coined as the most complained cop, have been extremely affected by an overzealous Civilian Complaint Review Board. And the Civilian Complaint Review Board really ties into New York City Council, because New York City Council has implemented progressive laws and policies that give the CCRB ammunition to weaponize against police officers that do intrusive police work. So the diaphragm law, which I think is extremely ridiculous, but fortunately it's never been weaponized against a cop yet, but it's on the books. I do think at some point. And also the right to know, this handing out of business cards to law enforcement officers. If you do get elected, and I hope you do, would there be any pushback from yourself on these right to know business cards, especially being a former law enforcement yourself? And also, that how dynamical it is to arrest someone, especially in a tussle, especially if you're in transit working alone, with this diaphragm law.
So there's a YouTube video where I discuss this. We remember the cop at 125 in Lex. He was dealing with this kid, and this kid jumped him. He's fighting for his life, right? He can't help struggling with this guy violating the law. How do you not wrestle with someone and get them down? And the same move that poor Daniel Pantaleo did on Eric Gardner, I did that move 100 times, right? I'm a little guy. He was a little guy. You get up. It's like a wrestling move. It was not a chokehold. A chokehold constricts the carotid arteries or the trachea. Okay, that's a chokehold. He had him in a headlock. A wrestling move you can see in a high school. I don't know if they still do it, but you take him and you use your weight and you get him down. Okay, Eric Gardner died of positional asphyxia and a heart attack brought on by positional asphyxia. They could have gave him better medical care, but I thought that the criminal culpability was not there, and Staten Island did a good job. I would have said stand him up, check his breathing. I was that kind of a person where I made sure that everyone's okay, check on the cops. But the sergeant there should have done that. Daniel's just fought for his life. He's out of breath. He's got this focus thing going on. The sergeant shows up. It's the sergeant's job to pick up the ball and make sure that everything is being handled, making sure the bus is coming, making sure everyone's getting treated. And she was brand new. She could have done a better job, but she didn't lose her job, right? She got a 30-day rip, and then whatever she did. Poor Daniel was a scapegoat. Now, I'm friends with Jimmy O'Neill, but I thought that decision was purely political, and I was so disappointed in that decision, because we have cops. Listen to this. I mean, you guys know. We have cops that are indicted for manslaughter or murder, indicted, go to trial, or acquitted, and they keep their job. This guy, Daniel, he was never indicted. They looked at him in the state, federal. They didn't have anything on him, and he lost his job. It was just totally political. It's just that kind of stuff enrages me as well. It makes me so angry because it's so hypocritical. It's throwing these cops on. The cops got to get the benefit of the doubt when they're wrong. I mean, we have a list of cops that are just totally wrong, right? Derek Chauvin, totally wrong. the cops in Brooklyn, South Brooklyn, who lock up this girl for marijuana, have sex with them in the back of the car. Please, I call out bad behavior because we have to. If we don't call out bad behavior when it happens, then when there's a case that's like a marginal, we lose our credibility. We lose our credibility. That's why it's so important to like this cop in the Bronx raped a woman at gunpoint. I heard not one but one cop from his command was at his trial. Right? You remember the cop? It was a cop who raped an Asian woman in an alleyway. He was in tox. It was a few years ago. I guess you don't remember. Yeah, it was horrible. And then, of course, the 9th Precinct, the Midnight Cops. You know, this drunk woman. They're calling in false jobs and going up and spending time in this woman's apartment. Give me a break. What the hell's wrong with you? These cops make all of our jobs so much harder. They put good cops in jeopardy. They give the progressive left the excuse they need to put more and more regulations on us. And yeah, of course, diaphragm law is a state law. As a state Senate candidate, I spoke about that law. As a city council candidate, I would certainly push back to try to put a justification exception into that law, right? So there's no justification in that law. You have to be, you have to hope that Bragg or Gonzalez or some other liberal DA doesn't decide to make an example out of a cop because he was fighting for his life, and maybe this guy had a heart attack or died while he's struggling with the cop. So yeah, the business card thing, I'm kind of like, I mean, to me, like, okay, yeah, here's a card. I don't see that that's an undue hardship on the cops, really. But maybe I'm wrong. Convince me otherwise.
Yeah, what we say about the 50A and about the business card, that it basically empowers the public to come after you. I mean, if you see, we have numerous videos of officers just standing on the corner and people just surrounding them. Let me get a business card, right? And now if you don't give them the business card, you're guilty. You're getting an abuse of authority, CCRB. So they're only doing that to file a complaint against you. So you're emasculated, you give them the business card, and now they're sitting there, and I don't know, you have something on your record, an abuse of authority for not giving another business card. And they're just using it to empower and harass cops. And I think that's the biggest thing. You've been out a while, so I could see why you wouldn't know about it. And I could see why most people won't think it's a big deal. But it is a lot bigger deal than I think gets made of it because of that. Because it is emasculating the sense of authority from cops. And, you got a guy like Eric. And the other thing about that Right to Know Act is you have a guy like Eric Dim. He served the city honorably for 20 years. He never received discipline from the NYPD. He was found guilty administratively by the CCRB. Now, on his record, his 50A, it's eternal. Yeah. We're releasing criminal records, 7 years. It doesn't matter what you did. If you don't get in trouble again, we're getting rid of criminal records. But Eric Dim, when he goes to get a job, he will be the most complained about cop forever. I don't think he'll be the most complained cop forever because I think the new guys are going to far surpass him because of ridiculous laws that the New York City Council passed. But I think that what they did is not only ruin him in his career, but they ruined him after. This is eternal. Like, there is no reason any longer that you should be able to pull up Eric Dim's 50A. He has a good guy letter from the NYPD. He retired honorably. Why do I need to know that he had an abuse of authority for not giving someone a business card? Why do I need to know? Why is that public information? But a guy that raped a little girl 7 years ago, we're expunging his record. I mean, it's insanity. And that's the thing where it's like one of those little laws that nobody knows about, but I think it's much bigger and it needs to be addressed on a bigger level because.
Well, I like that. That's a great argument, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing with we're expunging all the marijuana convictions are gone. Right? Marijuana convictions, they're all gone fine.
Except mine.
Except you.
Except when I was.
So why not? I mean, especially cop retires. Listen, now they pulled up my 50A. It was so funny because, I have exonerated complaints. who gets exonerated, right? Because it was just total BS. And they were on and on because over 32 years, I think I had five complaints, none founded, 2 exonerated, 3 unfounded. And they're going on and on about how horrible I was. Like, and someone, you're right, Eric, John, if someone doesn't know, he had 5 complaints. 5 complaints, 32 years. I was on the road the entire time. The entire time I was locking people up. And I got 5 complaints, Jesus. 1 exonerated or 2 exonerated. Who gets exonerated? So it's like, it's just, yeah, we just have to educate people. I'm more concerned. The business card to me, okay, I understand what you're saying. And when you just ask for something and then 50 people ask for it, they just want to get the cop for something. So yeah, I get it. You got to be reasonable, right? So, but what really concerns me with the CCRB is the evidentiary laws that they use. You could use hearsay, anonymous testimony. There should be a strict standard where you have to have rules of evidentiary rules that really protect these cops the same way you would protect any other defendant. I mean, that bothers me the most because that's taking money out of people's pockets, impacting their careers, and really, it's just not right. It's not right. Like expunging, which is another thing. You retired, you're no longer in the police department. You know what? That shouldn't be public knowledge anymore.
Well, what John said here is 100% right. As of now, I am the most complained cop, but I do believe that someone is going to far surpass me. And here's why. Not because they did more intrusive police work than I did, or along with my teams. It's because of the disciplinary matrix. And I'm sure you're aware of it. That's what was weaponized against me. So when the CCRB started to attack me, they started to attack me at the inception of the disciplinary matrix because they built their own algorithm for me. So I had no discipline record. I had absolutely nothing. Ironically, I received a 5 almost every year as a supervisor within the NYPD, which is the top. And I was getting awards for the same incidents I was involved in that I had got substantiated by the CCRB. And what CCRB did was they built up their own algorithm for me. And I'm sure with the disciplinary matrix, you have presumptive factors, right, which is automatic penalties, but you have mitigating and aggravating. Obviously, I never got any mitigating. They only gave me the aggravating. And what they did was, they substantiated every complaint against me. And even though the statute of limitations were exceeded on many of those, they used those substantiations to use as aggravating factors for other cases to say, well, you didn't hand the business card. Normally, that would be an ACD. Our cops know that. For anyone that's watched this, that it's not a cop. That's an in-house discipline from your commanding officer. After 1 year, it gets removed from your record. The most you can lose is 5 vacation days, right? But because you're Eric Dim and you have all these substantiated CCRBs, you have aggravating factors. For that same case of not handing your business card, you're now getting charges. You're going to the administrative trial room. That's what I find extremely problematic. What's your take on this disciplinary matrix, especially when I talk about being attacked as from this overzealous civilian complaint review board? Other cops are going to far surpass me, especially the cops that are out there now wearing khakis, doing intrusive police work, involved in these car chases. They are going to be affected by this as well, and that's been my complete argument.
Well, I mean, I want to dovetail to something similar, and we're getting these, and this is the district attorneys who are not doing their job, right? The same way we expunge marijuana convictions or other convictions after a certain amount of time, we're targeting cops with all these aggregating factors, this and that, the other thing, but we have a serial burglar doing South Brooklyn, 7, 8, 9 burglaries. You're collaring them, and I'm sorry, John.
Oh, no big deal. It's just a few burglaries. No big deal.
Non-violent. Yeah, right.
Non-violent.
But back in the day, you would charge him and go to trial on the most serious one, the one you had him dead to rights on, get a conviction, and then subsequent burglary charges. Say, listen, we got you on one. We're gonna try you on this one and this one and this one, and then we're gonna ask for consecutive sentences. Now they lump them all together. They lump every single thing together, and they give them a BS. They give them there's no more getting like 8-9 years for one burglary. Never mind 8. Now they give you what, 18 months. You could do a string of burglaries, victimize dozens of people, and they're lumping it together, concurrent sentences instead of consecutive sentences. And it's the district attorney's job to play hardball. It's the defense attorney's job to negotiate and defend. And this is the topsy-turvy world that we live in. So I want to plug my audio and video podcast, Vito LaBella Fighting for New York. It's not just me. So my advocacy over the last 6 years, I have come into contact with so many great people, fabulous people, ordinary people, who took time from their lives, from their comfortable positions, accomplished careers, private sector careers, and they got involved. They fought. And one of the person I'm going to interview is, this is going to, so part of my podcast is I'm going to bring these people on as guests, and we're going to have similar conversations. What motivated you to get involved? What motivated you to leave finance or you're a tax attorney? What motivated you to come and do this and hear their stories? Because that's what we do. We have to activate ordinary New Yorkers. We have to activate Dems that were Dems their whole life. And they're like, oh my God, what are they doing? This is not the Democrat Party that I know. We got to get more people to come over. But so I'm going to interview a guy that's a tax attorney, and he's going to run for district attorney against Alvin Bragg next year. So, I mean, that's the kind of person. He says, I have to run against this guy. This guy's insane. This guy's insane. And these are the people that we really have to elevate them. We have to give them a voice, and we have to get our message out.
No, absolutely. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish as well. We would love to interview him too. So, feel free to send them over to me too. We'd love to have him on. Anyone that's running against Alvin Bragg, we would definitely love to speak to, or in anything. And that's what, because I personally believe we are the news now. There was a time period where I started to get out onto national TV to speak about woke DAs and criminal and to crime and crime strategies. And then when, it became politically inconvenient to have me on because of my stance on medical freedom and my religious freedom in New York City, and how I believe that tied into the mass exodus in the NYPD, all those calls stopped. I was shunned. I was a tinfoil hat wearer. So, we started this podcast, and it's been, and through advocacy on social media. And I think that's the important message. I support anybody's views, even if I don't agree with you. I don't want to shut down the Democratic Socialists of America. I think they're horrible people. I'm not trying to say let's restrict their ability to have free speech or to hold that thing. But what I'm saying is we should be out there condemning it. We shouldn't be afraid to speak about it. We shouldn't be afraid to go out there and have a point of view. I do condemn the murdering of innocent life, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you're on my side and you want to see innocent people, women and children die, old people getting killed at a bus stop, you're a terrible person. I condemn you. That is disgusting. It's awful. There's nothing that you could do to get me to align with you at all. But what my whole point, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's so much stuff in New York City. It kind of overwhelms me at some points because there's just so much we could talk about. So that's the main idea. So where could we find you is one. I know you said you're on YouTube. Are there any other platforms you're going to be on? What other social media aspect? I know you're on Twitter. You use your name on Twitter. What other social media platforms you have? Yeah.
First of all, John, I want to apologize. I want to say how sorry I am that happened to you. My opponent, they totally lied about my stance, right? I want to talk about this real briefly because it dovetails. I think that the city council should do a deep dive into our response to COVID and put guardrails up so what happened to you never happens again. Never happens again. We have to, if the zombie apocalypse is upon us and we have to have vaccines, you should be able to take a leave and not lose any back pay, seniority. A year later, things are normal. You come back and you could buy back your time and you could fit right in. But most importantly, I don't think, especially a new vaccine should never, ever, we should never, ever be forced in anybody to take it. So again, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Going back I was on the PTA president. I was working with the schools, I represent a lot of kids and families in the Asian community. Back in September of 21, we were starting schools and my parents were terrified. They were terrified of coming back to school. So I'm on Facebook having a dialogue saying, okay, what if we make COVID vaccines and flu vaccines mandatory for the kids? This was a conversation that I was having. Okay. I don't think we should do that now. But back then, we're trying to just, throw ideas out there. And my opponents, disingenuous liars, say that Vito LaBella wants to require everybody in the country to get vaccines. I never said that. We're going to knock on the door and say, Mr. McCarry, I'm sorry. Our records say you don't have these vaccines. Nurse Jones here is going to come in and vaccinate you. That's baloney, right? I never said that, never implied that. I was trying to have a dialogue to try to make parents feel comfortable. But and again, we have to also differentiate between vaccines that have been around for 50 years, that everybody's kids have been getting for 50 years, and this new vaccine that's totally different, that I believe the government did lie to us or didn't tell us the full truth about the side effects of these vaccines. The government should never lie to you. They give you the pros and the cons, whatever they are, and then you have to decide. And that's no matter what issue we're talking about.
Well, I wish you nothing but luck in your endeavors, especially getting elected to the New York City Council. And what's important, dear to me, is, John and I started this podcast together, but John had started on social media, really reaching out and opposing the vaccine mandate, and started to build a name for himself. And I was silenced by the unions and the police department while I was being attacked by an overzealous civilian complaint review board, which coincided with New York City Council, of course. And what was utilized and weaponized against me was the disciplinary matrix, and also the statute of limitations were all exceeded on my cases, but the mandate by the governor to allow statute of limitations to exceed because of emergency exception was, again, weaponized against me. So I vowed to be the catalyst for change with the Civilian Complaint Review Board and the discipline matrix. So I do hope and intend. Thank you. I do hope and intend, if you get elected, that you can be infectious to other city council members. Explain to them that Eric Dim, which is a veteran lieutenant from the police department, savvy and intrusive police work, and I'm not the only one, there are so many others, are not going to be out there helping out with public safety because you're having them removed because the Civilian Complaint Review Board, with this ideology that intrusive police work is evil, where it's actually it's helping communities. If anything, we're the ones doing community service. We're helping communities by getting these illegal firearms off the street. So I wish you nothing but luck in your endeavors. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I wish you well.
Do you guys know Medical Freedom Party? Do you guys work with them, John? Do you know the Medical Freedom Party?
No, I don't. I mean, we kind of stay on our own. We're kind of outliers. We're like the black sheep of New York City.
So they're a political party. They have candidates. I'm going to send you contact information. Steve Spears, the head of it. I'm endorsed by them. Again, okay. I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm anti-mandate.
Listen, I'm the same, dude. And my whole take on it was I received COVID-19 in the line of duty. I get it while I'm out there. When we don't even have equipment, when there's no vaccine, I get it infected. I get my antibody tested. I have it. And the medical division and the city of New York are telling me I have to take the vaccine to get antibodies. I show them my antibody exam, which shows my antibodies are through the roof. And they tell me, no, you need to have antibodies. And I was like, wait a minute. And I asked 3 questions. I said, how many antibodies will the vaccine give me? How long will they last? And why are the antibodies that I have not good? Those 3 questions. And you know what I was told? If you don't take the shot in 7 days, you're going to get fired. And they denied my religious liberty. They denied my religious exemption. They cited that I cited COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. I never said one word about the vaccine. I never said anything about it. I didn't talk one word about the vaccine other than I don't feel that I have to take it. I have internal conversations with God. I believe God healed me. I believe God gave me these antibodies. I believe that there is no need for me to take medicine that I have the antibodies for, which is clearly stated in the Bible twice, where it says that Jesus says, those who are sick are in need of a doctor, and those who are not, do not. And I'm like, you can interpret that any way you want, but this is the way that I interpret it. I'm a born and raised a Roman Catholic, but I'm a believer of Christ and the Bible before I align with any church or any priest or any pope or anything of that. I believe so. It was just the hypocrisy and the lies of the whole thing, and then shutting my children out. Then it was bigger than me, dude. It was much bigger than me. It was much bigger than all of us. It was the fact that they went on the children. I'm a product of New York City public schools. Eric's a product of New York City public schools. My children were going through the New York City public school. I was invested in my community. I shopped locally. I cared about my region, and New York City is sending people like me and you out, and we're being put on the back burner. So many issues we could talk about, but I'm glad you came on. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I think, we would love to have you back on, go further and talk about other things too, because I think there's just so much stuff that we could cover and we're not even touching. We're just barely scratching the surface. Yeah. But if you could tell everybody where we could find you, where your podcast is going to be, and also if you could go into what is the main difference between you and the other candidates and why people should be voting for you.
Okay, so Vito LaBella for NewYork.com. My podcast, Vito LaBella Fighting for New York, is going to premiere on Spotify and Apple Play, as well as YouTube next week. And look, the other two people, Susan is she spent her career working with a politician, right, in the politician's office. The other person has zero experience. She lies about her experience. She lies about her advocacy. I won't even mention her name. But I have 32 years of minutia and institutional knowledge of the NYPD, and another 7 years of institutional knowledge about the Board of Education, right? The Department of Education. Now it's called New York City Public Schools. That's the latest branding. So 7 years, I could bore you so much about fair student funding and multi-language learners and migrants and all of this stuff. It'll make your eyes bleed. But here's what won't happen. I'll go into a meeting with public school, with the legislative assistant in the public school in New York City in the Tweed building, and they won't be able to snow me. They won't be able to gaslight me. They won't be able to do their song and dance, because I know I've been dealing with it for 7 years. When I go in to speak to people in the NYPD, they're not going to be able to stroke me because I know what the deal is, right? I know that, yeah, okay, index crimes are one thing, but all this other stuff, that's what we're really talking about. I tell you, I can talk to them. I have experience, I have knowledge, and I have the temperament. Dude, I talk to everybody. As police supervisor, we're all lieutenants. I worked in Manhattan my whole career. I dealt with everybody from all over the world. My cops were from all over the world. And I'm able to quarterback it and try to engage people, find common ground where we can to move forward. That's the main difference between me and the other two candidates.
Eric, you got anything?
Yeah, I think it's a great synopsis. I think it's awesome that we really address the issues with the vaccine mandates. I think this is great that you're running for city council and we get to discuss these issues, because you have an opportunity really to be firsthand with these vaccine mandates, with the issues with schools, the comparison with the migrant crisis. It's really unfair that there's reasonable accommodations for illegal migrants when there's no reasonable accommodations for a New York City police lieutenant. Just completely unfair, and we show the hypocrisy there. Again, we're all part of a migrant process ourselves, being Americans, but again, we are here, we're citizens, and as a law enforcement professional, there should be reasonable accommodations for you before we have migrants that have not been vetted. But with that also, again, in my case in particular, I really am advocating for change with the CCRB, New York City Council. The connection between both. This discipline matrix is really affecting the cops right now. You talked about safety. Safety is paramount. We cannot have safety back unless we have intrusive police work. We cannot have intrusive police work unless we have the support of the city council. We need the support of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. We need this disciplinary matrix completely revamped because, again, these aggravating factors, if you have an opportunity to see our episode where we talk about the discipline matrix, we really break it down to where it's being weaponized to remove best cops that the police department has to offer, completely emasculated, as John said, and we're wearing down to a police department that is not prepared to get the city back to where it needs to be. Even if you yourself can turn the city council over today, we don't have the police department to actually conduct that type of business and get it to where we are. So with that, I wish you luck, of course. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Send me talking points on the things that concern you, John, you too, talking points, the research. And that's how I learn. I take stuff and I read it, do my due diligence, and I say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. I want to be an extra voice along with you guys to get the message out.
No, absolutely. We appreciate that. Vito, before I let you go, one other thing. Police unions, did they endorse you?
So, I mean, does everybody understand that this is a political calculation that the police unions make? They have
absolutely.
to
we can talk about that. Absolutely.
They have to line up with the Dems because, listen, they got to look after their members. And if they only support Republicans, you know, when the police union comes and asks for this legislation or that legislation, it's going to be like, why should we deal with you? Why should we give you guys anything? You know, because you never support us. So I get it. The LBA did endorse me in the primary. They did endorse me last year for Senate. The LBA certainly did. It's so funny because, guys, I got to tell you this, inside baseball. You see the people, the poll workers that show up, hundreds of them in front of all the different polling places on election day. Many of them are union members, all the different unions, okay? People come in from Long Island. They're the head of this union, that union. Oh, I'm on the executive board here, and it's like, oh, we're handing out cards for the Democrats. I go, you're Democrat? Oh no, I'm a Republican. But you know, the union asks us to do this because we have to support the Democrat candidates. That's what's going on. I get it. Listen, we're all retired. We got to take the cops. The cops are going to have to come. They need a politician. So, you know, to get things done. We're looking right now in the, you guys have, I'm sure have talked about it. We're all impacted. This Medicare law that they want to ram down our throats for the retirees. They want to put us in a Medicare freedom, some
Medicare
group,
Advantage. Yeah.
Medicare Advantage. Thank you. Right. Listen, if you want to negotiate with guys on the job now and change their retirement benefits when they retire, that's your business. But once we retire, we're locked in. Same way our pension is locked in, our benefits should be locked in. You don't go, and because we don't have an active voice, because we can't vote in the union, you don't throw us under the bus. That's BS, right? You made a promise to us. You made a contract to the retirees. You got to honor that. And that's, something, of course, that I would elevate, not just for our union, but for all the unions.
John, I know you're dying to say something, and so am I. So, we were probably gonna end this, but we have to keep going. John, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first on this?
Let me just talk real quick, just about the unions. I am not don't ever give money to the Democrats. I am not that at all. I have plenty of friends that are Democrats, but they're common sense people.
Yes.
You want to support Bob Holden? You want to support people that support common sense? I have no problem with it. But here's my problems with the unions. Because Vito, they're listening to this. They're like little girls. They watch. You heard the opening of my thing. That's the former vice president of the PBA. Couldn't stand that we're out there in the public because everything is political with them, political driven, because they're no longer about the job. They're self-serving. They're more into hooking up their friends and their family members and jobs for them after. And I'm completely done with the unions. And they're sellouts. However, me being done with them, I still like to lead from behind, and I still like to give them a little free consulting. So when we had New York City council members voting to defund the police, voting on the diaphragm law, voting for this 50A, voting to not even voting, but advocating to get rid of SRG and get rid of CCRB and pull this money and come up there and abuse not only the commanders in the NYPD, but the rank and file. And you turn around after they showed you that they state they're abolitionists, they state they want to defund the police, and you endorse and give them money, or you sneaky and you don't endorse them and give them money, you're a sellout coward. You're not playing politics, because I'll tell you, they all live in Long Island. And when you look at who they endorse in Long Island, it's always Republicans. But yet in New York City, oh, we got to do this because the Democrats control everything. No, we got to get back to supporting the police. We got to get back to having real conversations. We got to get back to having common sense people elected. And I'm sorry, if you voted to defund the police and a police union is giving you a donation, that is not a police union. That is controlled opposition. So that's my message for you guys. Like that's literally, because they're going to listen to this very intently. And that's not to say they should have 100% be funding and endorsing you, Vito. Just by hearing you and what you have to say right now, I didn't know your platform before this, but just hearing what you have to say, this is common sense. This is public safety. They should 100% be giving you money. Sorry for my rant, and I'm sorry to even bring that up, but it was like it has to be said. I think it has to be said.
Well, you asked about the unions, right? So
yeah.
But listen, Vito, before you go ahead, I was dying to say something, so you start saying it. Look, I always say opposition meets opportunity, and I get it. Sometimes the union might have to actually fund the opposition, but communications breaks barriers, right? If they're in communication with their opposition and it's going to break barriers, then I can understand, and the money's well spent. But the problem is, and I think John actually put a tweet about it today, and I was actually thinking about it. Kathy Hochul, I understand she's Democrat, right? We might fund some Democrats, but are we going to fund Democrats that are anti-police, that spew this anti-police sentiment, this anti-police rhetoric? Because I think it's ironic, and I'm sure she was probably laughing, that simultaneously, while she's receiving funded campaign funds from the PBA union and other unions as well, she's also vetoing bills that are in favor of the police department at the same time. That's where I have a problem with the money that's being funded, right? If the money's being funded because it's going to benefit them, okay, then I understand it. We rub elbows, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. But they're funding the money for what? It's not in favor of the police department, because John said it, they're self-serving, because it's in favor of them. It's in their best interest for them to further their careers. 1,000% they should be endorsing you. You can break those barriers. You can have communication. You served the police department for 32 years. There's common ground there. There's commonalities. You're not anti-police. So there's barriers that could be broken there. Again, most of them are not New York City residents. I remember Lou Turco himself. I was a delegate, so I attended these meetings. Lou Turco was the LBA president. Mm-hmm. At the time, the topic of conversation was Tier 2A. Tier 2A had just got passed for the fire department. And we said, why are we not pushing this proposal for the New York City Police Department? He said, there's no reason to at this time. We don't have any friends in Albany. So if we don't have any friends in Albany, why are we funding them?
Thank you.
We got to look. Teachers are very good. You see a lot of teachers running for office. We got to get more cops running for office. We have to start mentoring people. And that's another thing I hope to do. Look, I'm just a messenger. I'm fighting an uphill battle, an underdog battle. I got a good shot because all I need is a plurality, and we're focusing on Vito LaBella, my name, not my party, which is fine. We do have a shot. But here's the thing. We should be seeking out retired cops who are living in the city or living wherever. And we should be giving them the tools. Say, listen, we'd like to hear you. We'd like to teach you. We'd like to give you some resources about how to run. Here's a website. Here are your flyers. Here's this. Here's that. We want people. We want to encourage people like us, and not just us. Listen, common sense nurses, doctors. Like you said, we have to find these people and we have to give them the tools they need to come forth and serve in government.
I love it. Listen, this is a great conversation. I would definitely want to do this again. Let's definitely do it soon. It was great. I appreciate it. No, seriously, it was. And you're 100% right, dude. 150% right. Like, that's exactly what we got to do. Guys, everybody, thank you for tuning in. I believe the only reason that me, Eric, and Vito are able to do what we do is because at this point in our lives, we've become financially independent. Even though I'm still not collecting my pension, I've made good investments in my life. Yeah. Invest in yourself, whether you're young on the job, you're in the middle of your career, or you're towards the end of your career. Small payments over time. Contact our friends at Laidlaw Blue. Let them know the Finest Unfiltered sent you there. And start to invest in your future, because you don't want to be where you can't speak up and you can't talk about the atrocities that are happening in New York City or across the world. We need strong voices in the world, and you can't do that if you're completely solely dependent on bowing down to the mayor or his appointed lackeys.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed, or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE.
All right, my brother. Listen, New York's Finest, Retired and Unfiltered podcast. We're not going to sell you any nonsense. It is what it is. We're out here. We're having real conversations. We're bringing real people on, and we're going to keep doing it. Eric, let's do it again, my brother.